Three keys. Three keys for Oregon to win this football game. You can list other ones as well. Win the turnover battle. Get off the field on third down. The generic ones. I'm going to start with the number one key. That if you tell me right here, right now, as I'm recording the show on Thursday afternoon, that Oregon accomplishes this key, they win the football game and do so pretty comfortably, it's win the rushing battle. It's win the rushing battle. It's not just stop the run. It's not just run the ball. It's a combination of those two things. If Oregon outgains Oregon State by 40 or 50 yards or more on the ground, Oregon's going to run away with this football game. I do not have faith that Oregon State's passing attack is going to be able to move the ball up and down the field on this Oregon defense. I think Giovanni McCoy is solid. I think he is capable. I do not believe the receiving core, which wasn't great a season ago and really struggled against some of the familiar faces in this Oregon secondary. Remember, Dante Manning had maybe his best game as a Duck last year against Oregon State. He had 2 pass breakups, a couple of tackles, one of which I think was for loss, and he had an interception in the end zone as well. He played awesome. The receivers on this Oregon State team, they are not as capable. You do not have an Anthony Gould out there. You do not have a Silas Bolden out there. I think the receiving core has taken a step back, and this Oregon secondary has taken a step forward. Brandon Johnson is one of the best defensive backs in the country through the first couple of weeks in coverage. He's been awesome. Jabbar Muhammad, we know what he's capable of. He's had a couple of missed assignments or a couple of moments where he's gotten beat, but he's also had a couple of really nice plays in the secondary so far with the Ducks. I am curious, and I'll talk about it more later, if we see names like Cam Alexander or Sione Laulea, but with the guys Oregon is primarily going to put out there in coverage, which are Brandon Johnson, Dante Manning, and Jabbar Muhammad, those 3 guys so far, I think have done a nice job. I think they've done a really, really nice job. So if Oregon is able to not just slow down Oregon State's rushing attack and force them to pass, but they themselves have a competent rushing attack, I think that unlocks the keys to this offense that makes it look more, not entirely identical, but more similar to what we saw when Bo Nix was at the helm a season ago. Because this has always been, since Dan Lanning took over, a very balanced offense. They want to run the football, they want to have the play-action pass, and you haven't had a super effective play-action pass game because Oregon hasn't run the ball that well. So if you run for over 200 yards and you hold Oregon State under 200 yards rushing, I think the Ducks will be in for the sort of victory that a lot of us are looking for. So that is key number 1. Key number 2, limit the penalties. Yes, I'm talking about the offensive line, but there have been other penalties that have reared their heads at points in time. There was a roughing the passer last week against Boise State. Penalties are going to happen. You keep this number under 50 yards of total penalties for the game, I think that limits what Oregon State is going to be able to come up with on either side of the ball. Because if Oregon plays as well as they are capable, if they play clean, if they play a better version of football than what they have done the last couple of weeks, I really don't think Oregon State can keep up. I really don't. But the way that you allow the Beavers to keep their crowd in it, the way you allow the Beavers to just flat out keep themselves in the football game, is you give them second chances or you kill drives yourself. If you've got holding penalties along the offensive line, that can be a drive killer in and of itself. If you have procedure penalties, that can get the crowd to give you an extra level of juice on top of what they are already going to bring to the table, which is probably going to be one of the loudest environments Oregon plays in this season. Reser is going to be absolutely rocking. It always is. The Ducks are usually the biggest game on Oregon State's schedule, and I don't think that's an exception this year. When you look at what their schedule entails, they have 7 Mountain West opponents, 4 Power 4, and 1 FCS. This is the biggest game of the year for Oregon State. You see Oregon fans online say, well, this is Oregon State's Super Bowl, and it's not Oregon's. Yep. Fact check true. That's the way the environment's going to be. You can't give them extra chances because you don't want to do that against any team, of course, right? When Oregon plays Ohio State, you don't want to give a great team extra chances because they can capitalize. But the difference in this game is if you give Oregon State extra chances, they'll hang around. If you don't, I think it's going to be hard for the Beavers to keep it incredibly tight. I don't expect everything to be cleaned up all at the same time for Oregon in this game. I don't think they're going to suddenly, not allow a single sack of Dylan Gabriel, run for 250 yards on 6.5 yards of carry as a team, and have 20 yards of penalties and go win the game 42-10. I think it's going to be tougher than that. But these are the sorts of steps I think Oregon fans should be looking for to say, okay, is Oregon taking a step forward? That's what you ultimately want to see this week. Does Oregon look better? Are they playing a better brand of football than what they put on the field the last couple of weeks? Are the mistakes being cleaned up? And penalties is one of those things. Last key that I've got, and certainly there are others. Let me know your thoughts in YouTube comments or hit me up on Twitter as well. Create explosive passing plays. This was my favorite thing about the Boise State game, even more than having a kick and a punt return touchdown in the same game. And look, it was great to see Noah Whittington make an explosive play like that and be back and healthy. It was great to see Tez Johnson have a couple of great punt returns. Hopefully Oregon has got everything solid on special teams. Hopefully they don't need special teams. That's what I want to see in this game. Last week, Oregon needed special teams because the offense was struggling a little bit. Hopefully they don't need the special teams this week because they're explosive in the pass game. That Oregon State passing attack isn't designed to be explosive. That's not schematically the way they approach playing football. I don't think they have the personnel to be explosive in the pass game. Certainly they could hit a chunk play here or there. But when you look at what Oregon did in the passing game last week, I like Dylan Gabriel week 2 against Boise State far more than week 1 against Idaho. And week 1, 41 of 49, 380 and 2 touchdowns. Week 2, 18 of 21, 240 and a couple scores. I like that second guy a lot better because he's creating explosive pass plays. It doesn't mean you don't have quick hitters. That's a part of the offense. Gabriel's really good at it, and he's an incredibly efficient passer. But if you create explosive plays in this game, number one, takes the life right out of the crowd, and number two, it's how you can pull away from Oregon State. Because Oregon State wants to muck this game up. Oregon State wants to make this ugly. They want to make it a defensive slugfest. They want to make it a run game battle. All of those things. If you start turning it into a track meet, I don't think they can keep up. Think about last year's game against Oregon State. 31-7 final score. What was the singular most important play in that game for the Ducks? The most important play in the game for the Beavs was Camden Lewis missing a field goal. That went from 17-0 to 14-7. Big momentum shift in the game. But the biggest play in that game for the Ducks was the Beavs go down, they score, one possession game. That's what you think it's going to be entering the half, and boom, Bo Nix hits the deep shot to Troy Franklin on a Patrick Mahomes-style throw where he's rolling right, he throws back left, and he beats the Oregon State defender, and he creates a big touchdown, and it's 21-7 going into the break. That was the pivotal moment, and that's what this Oregon State team has even less of than last year's team. They have a quarterback that doesn't have as big of an arm. They have receivers that are not as explosive and dynamic. So if Oregon creates those plays, and if they can hit a couple of chunk plays the way they did last week to Evan Stewart and to Trayshawn Holden, you get 2 or 3 of those 40-plus yard chunk plays. I think it takes the life out of Reser Stadium, deflates the defense, and allows Oregon to have the sort of offensive success we know they're capable of. And Oregon State can't do that. If the Beavs are going to win this game, which make no mistake about it, they're capable of doing. If Boise State could have beaten Oregon last week, this Oregon State team could absolutely beat the Ducks if they don't show up ready to play. But if Oregon is able to score, I think, over 28 points in this game, I don't believe Oregon State can get there. Oregon State wants this total points, wants the total points scored in this game to be under 40, right? They want like a 21-17 sort of football game. That's where they win. But if Oregon turns it into a track meet, I don't think the Beavs can keep up. So the 3 keys to victory: win the ground game, limit the penalties, be explosive in the passing game. That's what I've got for the biggest keys against Oregon State.